Favour? Joyce and Thwaites. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. There are two late items for consideration, the BOPLAS statement of intent and the CoLab statement of intent. Could I have a mover and a seconder to accept the late items? Councillor Granger, Councillor Henry. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Declarations of interest. Does anyone have a declaration? Conflict? No, thank you. There are no public excluded items, and I'm not aware of anyone for a public forum. So we'll move on to page 8 and the Community Board minutes for receipt. So I call for a mover and seconder for the minutes of the Kadikadi Community Board meeting 31st May be received. Councillor Joyce, Councillor Coxhead. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Minutes of the Amokoroa Community Board. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Granger, Councillor Thwaites. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Minutes of the Tapuki Community Board meeting 8th of June. Councillor Daly, Councillor Wickers. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Makatu Community Board. Deputy Mayor Scrimger and Councillor Crawford. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Council and committee minutes for confirmation. I shall move the council meeting on the 16th of May, the minutes there. Seconded Councillor Murray Benge. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Minutes of the Projects and Monitoring Committee held on 16th of May. Councillor Thwaites? Yeah, and Councillor Henry. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Minutes of the Strategy and Policy Committee meeting 25th of May. I shall move those. And who else will second? Councillor Henry. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. I'll move the minutes of the council meeting on the 6th of June. And seconded Deputy Mayor Scrimger. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. And the last one for these minutes, minutes of the Te Ihu o Te Waka o Te Rawa meeting held 10th of May. Councillor Crawford, Councillor Daly. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. So moving to page 90 with reports 12.1, establishment of CCTV working party and delegations. So I think Gary, if you can present this one, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'll just take this as read. So it's the same process as we've done the last couple of years. So the committee structure and the process of calling for, I guess, applications for the CCTV cameras, etc., will continue the same as previously. What's proposed after discussion with yourself is a change in the membership of that committee.
Councillor Joyce.
Sorry, just want to check. I was looking through this and I couldn't see it, so forgive me if I've missed it. The rules on where to put the cameras, that they have to be in public areas, right? So there was a suggestion during the annual plan process that they could be used for our elderly housing, but that doesn't fit the policy, does it?
I think, Councillor Joyce, so we do have a policy. I don't know if you read the full policy.
Yeah.
I think the panel will be made aware of that and briefed more fully about that. I think now is probably not the time to be debating the policy as such, but rest assured, as being a member of the panel, you will be fully informed on that one. Yes. Councillor Henry.
Yeah, I don't profess to know what happens with this committee because I haven't been on it, but I have heard there was a bit of hiccup with some of the cameras. Perhaps they weren't showing number plate recognition in the beginning when they went out. Is that correct? That's the first question.
Well, I think, Councillor Henry, I think that's an issue for the Projects and Monitoring Committee. I take your point. There has been some discussion about that, but I think this is not about operational
that's going to come back, and we're going to have a discussion before it.
We can have a discussion at some point, but now is probably not the right time for that.
So you will make a note to put that on the agenda.
Well, Deputy CEO Alice can attend to
I'll
that.
just say, because there is a lot of money here. There is a lot of money in this that community boards are committing to, and I really need to be assured that what we're getting is what they are expecting.
Right. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, so I'll look for a mover and seconder for the recommendations before us. Councillor Henry, Councillor Coxhead. Is there any debate? There being none, I shall put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Item 12.2, page 93, District Licensing Committee process for the appointment of commissioners and members.
Good morning.
Good morning, Diggle.
No?
Microphone.
Oh, sorry.
No, we're just getting through to the important stuff.
Can we hear me okay? Okay. Well, the purpose of this report is to present to the committee the process of appointing commissioners and members to the District Licensing Committee. The requirement for council to appoint a District Licensing Committee is prescribed under the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act 2012. The purpose of the District Licensing Committee, though, is to make decisions on alcohol licensing matters which benefits our community. And we're talking about all licenses. We're talking about club licenses. We're talking about on licenses, off licenses, special licenses, manager certificates. They're expected to operate with the powers of a commission of inquiry, which is essentially an independent body. Decisions issued are legal in nature and can be appealed to the alcohol licensing, so a regulatory licensing authority, up to the High Court. And just recently, Auckland's local alcohol policy has been appealed up to the Supreme Court. So the decisions made have to be robust. The current District Licensing Committee membership consists of 3 commissioners and 3 members. Membership of the DLC can be approved for a period of up to 5 years. With regard to the weekly workload of writing legal decisions and holding hearings under the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act, it is strongly recommended that we utilise commissioners. They need to operate with a high degree of legal rigour. Hearings tend to attract talented legal counsel, and in this very room we've had some of the best legal counsel in the country when it comes to alcohol licensing, and those arguments are robust and they're long and they're tough. So commissioners are expected to act fairly in the face of such legal arguments and conduct hearings in a manner that's fairly fair, let's just say, and reflects all the information and evidence presented. The bottom line is that experienced commissioners bring a wealth of knowledge and depth of understanding of the Act and are required to ensure that council decisions are well presented and legally robust. Members of the committee can be community members or members of the council. Members participate in hearings mainly and need to have knowledge of alcohol licensing matters from a community perspective, legislative experience, including a working knowledge of the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act. Now then, when the local alcohol policy was being progressed in 21-22, the community engagement process raised a number of matters that were outside of the local alcohol policy. As part of that engagement process, feedback was sought from Ngai Tarangi Iwi Trust as a Maori health service provider in November 2021. In addition to providing feedback with respect to the local alcohol policy, the Trust also proposed that iwi have a voice in the decision making and subsequently requested to be included on the selection panel for the District Licensing Committee. As a consequence, a resolution was carried, which stated council seeks a wide diversity of candidates for the District Licensing Committee and consider who is included on the appointment panel. To acknowledge and progress this resolution, it is important to consider how council will recruit for the District Licensing Committee in order to capture a wide audience of diverse candidates and to also consider who will be on the appointment panel. We aim to undertake engagement as follows for the expressions of interest of the members. We're going to advertise and promote on the council website, communication with community boards and council's partnership forum, advertising through Seek and Trade Me as well. The appointment panel would consist of a staff member, myself, and other appointees, including iwi representation, to be determined by the mayor in consultation with staff. The suggested timeline for the recruitment process is that we more or less advertise straight away. In July, we select an interview panel, we conduct interviews, and then we select candidates with the aim of reporting back to the council by the end of August. That's all I can say.
Thank you. Just a question I had before I open up for further questions. So we're appointing the DLC for a period of 5 years.
Yes.
Just for continuity, would it make sense and is it possible to stagger the board? Or
I've
stagger
I've just been thinking about that process this morning, actually. The very same thing. It makes so much sense. I think Wellington do something very similar. I think moving forward, that's a very good idea.
So if we were to do that, you'd probably appoint some people for a shorter length of time than perhaps others, and because everyone's term finishes shortly. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Something
Good
to
idea.
consider anyway. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Murray Benz, you had a question.
Yes, I think this is an interesting one. How does one become a commissioner? Because you've got people around this table that have got commissioners' tickets for Resource Management Act, and it's sort of similar. And as the alcohol outlets are all within our areas, I'm just surprised. It's good that Don Thwaites is there, but no other councillors. And how do these commissioners become commissioners?
They've spent the best part of their working life in the alcohol arena, as starting off as licensing inspectors and moving their way up into working from the police in an alcohol side as well. So they've got a wealth of experience with respect to the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act and the predecessor act as well, which was the Sale of Liquor Act.
Well, it's just that one of the members there is just a former councillor and no more experience than I've got, for example, or anybody else around the table.
Councillor Henry.
I was looking to see who actually was the chair. Has the chair stood down from the?
We generally have commissioners instead of chairs. There's different rules for chairs. So a chair is essentially could be a councillor or some member of the council, but we generally have commissioners who have a large background from the alcohol perspective.
Mm.
And the main reason for that is the legal side of being a commissioner is quite in depth and quite tough. Those decisions that they have to make are either benefit the community or they don't benefit the community. So it's not an easy job.
No. And presumably the chair has to write the report at the end. But I did ask, who is the current chair? You've got the current licensing committee, but it doesn't say who the chair is.
We don't have a chair as such. We have three commissioners.
Oh, so
They make the decisions. It's about 300 decisions a year that they make with respect to alcohol.
That'd be very interesting with no one at the head running the meeting.
Well, I think the point is most of them are single person committees where they decide as a commissioner on their own.
The only time they tend to come together is at a hearing with disputed applications, which we generally have about one hearing a year, but at the moment, due to a nature of circumstances, we've got 6 in the pipeline that we're expected to manage.
I think my confusion was that you had Councillor Don Thwaites as deputy chair.
Yes.
That's how come.
Yeah. I'm going to let Councillor Thwaites speaking. I'm sure he can enlighten us a little bit.
Yeah, I can enlighten you a little bit. Dougal's covered it off largely. The bulk of the applications are largely renewals, or anyone in this room who knows the district could obviously read the application. It's been vetted by the police, it's been vetted by Dougal and staff, so a high level of work is done in the background to do it. Really, to say you need someone super qualified, you would if you're trying to tangle with Progressive Foods over closing hours of Countdown supermarkets, like we found out in Auckland. But on the whole, and issues, Dougal said he's got a few piling up, and we've got growth happening in our area, and we've got a whole new town centre occurring in Omokoroa. So there will be applications there, but the population's growing, so that's always the argument. So, like I said, it's not really big. The key to me, how you talked about continuity, James, really is someone of the ability and experience of Murray Clearwater he's probably the key, given his vast wealth of experience. And you'd really want to take around, with the greatest respect to the other two commissioners, they really only came from sort of the policing type background or local government. So Murray has that real wealth, and you'd really want to target how much life is left in his legs, and then plan a successor to him, basically. That'd be my thoughts.
I'm inclined to agree, yes.
Thank you for those insights. Councillor Crawford.
Does the policy on alcohol licenses and that set by the council?
So we set the local alcohol policy,
Yeah.
which we did
Yeah,
21,
So-
22.
22.
so this committee here is just working within that policy, right?
The district license committee is stipulated, it has to, it has to happen. It's one of those things that's the Southern Supply of Alcohol Act, the legislation, so to speak, stipulates, we have to have one. They have to, they're the body which make the decisions for the licenses in the district.
Only reason why I asked that is like in Te Puke, with the issue of the amount of licenses, especially off licenses we've had, per the size of our town and that. So within these hearings, commissioners and that discuss about, the amount of, or is it endless of what can be if they meet the criteria?
The district license committee were very instrumental in shaping the way we've dealt with Te Puke, in so much as we put a lot of restrictions on all the off licenses in Te Puke to stop that supply of alcohol getting into the hands of the wrong people. But it was Murray Clearwater that came up with the concept.
But in terms of the policy and the number of licenses, that was considered by council last year. Yeah. Councillor Granger.
Thank you. Councillor Thwaites has brought up the issue of the expansion of the town centre at Mokoroa, and my question is whether there's been any changes since the last alcohol licensing application in Mokoroa, which generated a fair amount of community response and input. And one of the issues was that the public notification turned out to be a piece of A4 paper stuck on a wall that nobody could see from the footpath. And the complaint from the community was that we didn't know this was happening. Now, there's a fair bit of knowledge that a pub is intended to be arrive at the new yarn centre that's going to open in August. But my question is, has there been any changes to the rules and legislation, policy, whatever, around that issue of public notification, so the public actually does know about these things rather than relying on public notices in the paper that nobody reads, or a piece of A4 paper tucked up behind a rubbish bin somewhere?
Okay, the legislation itself hasn't changed. There's a requirement to public notify in a local paper on 2 occasions. There's a site notice which needs to be displayed. I think that's the issue you're bringing to the fore. In addition, we're working on the concept of trying to inform communities using the internet, social media. That is a bit of a project because we're restricted with what IT can actually do, but we're aware of the fact that we want communities to be informed. So that concept hasn't gone away, and moving forward, we will hope to be able to inform more people.
Thank you.
Councillor Murray Benge.
So before most of us were thought of, we did a policy with Tauranga City, and the first thing they did was dip out of it. How often do we have to review that policy?
The local alcohol policy, I think it's every 5 years, but don't quote me on that one. 5 years, or it might be 7 years. I can't remember off the top of my head. Yeah.
Yes, but it must be at least 5 years now.
No,
No.
we've just done it last year.
Yes.
So it won't be for a little while yet. Okay. Are there any further questions of Diggle? Okay, so I shall ask for a mover and seconder for the recommendations before us. Councillor Thwaites, Councillor Henry. Is there any debate on these? There being none, I shall put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, Dougal.
Thank you very much.
So moving on to item 12.3, page 117. Smart Growth Leadership Group Joint Committee Membership and Terms of Reference. And invite
Thank you, Your
Rachel
Worship.
to present.
I'd like to take the report as read, except to say that it is largely a pro forma report that all three of the partner councils are including on agendas. Tauranga City has already resolved a position in relation to these recommendations. And it is essentially what is required to approve the Smart Growth Leadership Group Joint Committee Agreement and terms of reference, noting that there has been, for the beginning of this triennium, a little bit of a refresh around smart growth arrangements, and that is largely to ready the leadership group for resource management reform and the requirement to move into a regional spatial planning framework. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rachel. Are there any questions? Councillor Murray-Bench.
Regional spatial framework, what does that mean, Rachel?
So, Margaret, that's one of the fundamental foundations of the new resource management system that we brought to council when the resource management reform was first mooted, and it is progressing. In fact, we've got new legislation or new bills to consider now. But largely what it contemplates is that what we do at the smart growth level will become a regional function. So whereas we plan spatially for our growth in transport infrastructure and new communities in a Western Bay of Plenty context at the moment, what is proposed through that legislation is regionalising that function or those functions.
Other question, Councillor Murray-Bench?
No.
Okay, any other questions for now? Councillor Henry.
Is it possible to know who is on the committee operations for smart growth? Because
So the
selecting it and appointing an independent chairperson and deputy chairperson. Do you know who they are?
So there's different elements to smart growth. You have the leadership group, which is elected members and the Crown and various others. And then there's CGIG, Smart Growth Implementation Group. And I think there's a manager's level as well below that. So
It might be the committee of operations. It might be the committee of operations. I just see it doesn't. It's staff, I suppose, staff.
The one that sits directly under the senior leadership group, which James is on and deputy chairs, which is the subject of this terms of reference. There's the CGIG one is mainly the group of CEs from the councils, plus some senior officials from MHUD, KO, Waka Kotahi. So it's more operational.
Like our Europe operation. Same as me. Thank you.
Yeah, governance versus operations. Yeah.
So the independence comes from out.
There's
The independence comes from out in the community. It's not part of.
the independent on the operations group has just been appointed. It's a man called Craig Batchelor. So he's just been appointed in the last few weeks. He was interim, and now he is the permanent replacement for that committee. And the independent chair for the governance committee, the SLG, is in the process of being recruited at the moment.
Thank you.
thank you. Councillor Daly.
Rachel, I see in point 5 of the background that tangata whenua wish to change the process for appointment of tangata whenua reps. I couldn't find any further information about that. Are you able to comment on the proposed process?
Yes, I can. So you're right in so much that paragraph 5 in the substance of the report relates to resolution 5 or proposed resolution 5. At the moment, the Smart Growth Agreement suggests or records that the process for appointing tangata whenua representatives onto the Smart Growth Leadership Group is by way of iwi nomination, and that's not correct. It's not by iwi nomination. So the tangata whenua, the combined tangata whenua forum, and indeed the tangata whenua representatives on the Smart Growth Leadership Group would just like to have ultimately the agreement changed to reflect the way that tangata whenua representatives get on to the Smart Growth Leadership Group, which is not through the iwi.
So would you say it's more a hapu nomination rather than an iwi nomination?
No, I didn't say that. It's through the process, and I'm not too sure whether this is the context for this discussion right now, but at a very high level, the way that tangata whenua representatives are nominated onto the Smart Growth Leadership Group is primarily through the respective forums of the councils, of the two councils.
Councillor Mowbray.
Can't get my head around it, Rachel, forgive me, but is this in the anticipation of the RMA legislation being passed in Parliament?
I don't think that's not the sole driver, but it is one consideration, and I think an appropriate consideration for our regional, sub-regional leaders to be thinking about, because the resource management reform is gaining momentum, as I mentioned earlier. But it is primarily, as I understand it, and perhaps Mayor James can speak to this more fully, but the refresh around the smart growth arrangements was simply to ensure that it is the most efficient sub-regional leadership body in the space of spatial planning that it can be.
And so it won't interfere with Western Bay's position on that group?
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that. So this is about making the Smart Growth Leadership Group the most efficient way of operating that it can be. So some tweaks there, and in the way just the membership is put together and the different meetings it has, but it's not directly to do with the RMA reform. Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, I just want to follow up from what Grant was saying, Rachel. When we were at that meeting the other day, when we were deciding on agreeing together as councils. So one, my representative said they didn't cast a vote because they hadn't consulted with their local hapus, where Jeff Rice, the other one, made a decision not based on because he consulted, but just because of his position. So there were two different things played out there. So it was a little bit confusing what you're saying here about how they appointed. Are they representing because they themselves appointed there just like any of us would be, or is there some way that they're supposed to be representing tangata whenua when they're around the table at Smart Growth?
Councillor Crawford, I'm not sure it's fair to ask Rachel, the decision-making process is going on the head of members of the Smart Growth Leadership Group. Fitua had his reasons and Jeff has his, and that's what we must accept. Yeah. Okay. So if there's no further questions, we have 5 recommendations there. I'm happy to move those. We have a seconder, Councillor Henry. Any debate? Councillor Mowbray.
So I support the recommendations reluctantly, because anything that might question Western Bay, I get defensive of. And with the opposition, as we heard at Kadikadi, that if there is a change of government, the RMA as is proposed will be wiped and we'll go back to this difficult one that we presently have, because the argument is that the new one is about 10 times worse. So I just keep an open mind on it and note that improving smart growth's performance is paramount. Otherwise, why have it? And so we've got an opportunity to see whether this will actually improve the decisions that come out from them. More importantly, that those representing central government will actually coordinate their approach and be supportive for a change. That would be very helpful. And while I'm on it, Sue, I hope that somebody around here has the power to get Te Puna to Omokara back on the 10-year plan, because from what I was hearing the other day, the minister can make a switch like that, but if we want to do anything, we've got all these layers of bureaucracy to go through. So I think if you could use your unbridled power, it would be very helpful.
Yes. Would that it was so. But anyway, Councillor Henry.
So just speaking to what we're looking at today, and all things, everything that we do needs to be reviewed. We constantly do it in council, and I just see this as being a renewal, and we have from Rachel and indication from John, our CEO, and from our mayor, that this is the best possible, for this current thinking, is the best possible whatever this is, what is it? The document is the best possible way of going forward for the current situation that we're in. And I take that to be very supportive from those three people. And so that's why I'm supporting this document today.
Thank you. I hope it's an improvement. So any other speakers? Okay, no, so I shall put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. So moving on to page 131, item 12.4, the annual plan update and adoption of the schedule of fees and charges. Rebecca.
Kia ora, the report you have in front of you is essentially a recommendation from the 14 June Annual Plan Long-Term Plan Committee, where we are proposing to adopt the fees and charges excluding the indicative FinCo schedule. It has just been brought to my attention that the document that you have attached still says indicative FinCos on that schedule. That is a typographical error, and we will remove that from the body of the document when it is published, if the council is minded to adopt. The other recommendation we are seeking today is around the continuation regarding the Dave Hume pool, given the delayed adoption of the annual plan. I will take the body of the report as read.
Thank you, Rebecca. Do you have any questions? Councillor Wickers.
Yeah, just in regard to the Dave Hume pool, not really sure what happened with the Puki pool last season, but whatever did go wrong in that space that we have control over, can it make sure that it's not repeated at Dave Hume?
Thank you, Andy. I don't think anyone would be in favour of that. So yeah, take your point. Councillor Joyce.
Sorry, I missed one when you said things we shouldn't vote on. Well, of course, as I said at the meeting the other day, I'm thinking of doing the retrofitting of the installation. So please note that I do not vote or speak regarding that, since I'm actively involved in it.
Thank you. Okay. Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour. I think, yeah, don't see any other questions. So thank you, Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour. Could I have a seconder for those, please? Councillor Coxhead. Is any debate on this? No? Okay, I shall put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. So we now move to the late items. So if you can move to your late agenda, which has been uploaded separately. So in the other document, page 3, final Bay of Plenty Local Authority Shared Services Limited Statement of Intent for 23-26. And we have Adele. Looks like, thank you.
Through the chair. So these reports came to you earlier this year in the form of a draft. And council had the opportunity to make any recommendations on the changes to the statement of intent. It went back to both the CoLab and to the Bay of Plenty Local Authority Shared Services Group, and they have now come back with their final document based on the feedback received. So this is just a formality today to receive those reports. Thank you.
Councillor Henry.
Yeah, I was actually looking at my computer in the afternoon. I'd actually read my minutes early in the morning and was surprised to see that document in there and that the submissions had actually finished in April, and was wondering how come we had received both of these documents so late.
Through the chair, you did. There was a prior paper in draft received by council. So there was the opportunity to provide some feedback to both CoLab and to Botlas.
Yeah, but we just got them a few days ago. Why?
So that's the final. So there's the
There
board
was
have
no
met.
change, is that what you're saying?
They're now included for the final. So we went. It came down to each of the both the CoLab and the Botlas. I haven't been privy to go through the details to identify what the changes that were made, unfortunately.
And one thing I noticed that, and it's just in the document with CoLab, I think it's CoLab, I think I got the right one, that it's most talks about Waikato, 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 and yet there's 3 councils in there that aren't in the Waikato. So maybe whoever speaks to them could look at the rhetoric in the documents when we're actually reading it. It's only a little thing.
I think it was, you're quite right, and it was originally Waikato Lus, which is the equivalent of Botlas. And because they were going wider, they changed their name to CoLab. So there might be some old habits still in there in terms of their drafting. Yep.
I just felt that probably the whole document hadn't really had an once over lightly, and it does need to be looked at again. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other further questions on the Botlas statement of intent? Councillor Mybench.
Just through you, sir, to Adele, because you're new and presumably have not been involved with this before, is it as, in your opinion, and it's mean to even ask you this, but in your opinion, is it as good as it can be? From council's point of view?
Yeah, I'm not sure how
through
fair a
the chair.
question that is actually, but Adele, do you want to attempt to answer that?
Through the chair. So the chief executive is on the Bay of Plenty Local Authority Shared Services Group, so he may be able to speak to the opportunity there.
I just want to make sure I'm clear about the question. You're not talking about the document so much as the performance of the group. Is that right? Okay. The performance, I think Botlas has been very clear about its strategic direction for a number of years, and that was always to bring procurement efficiencies for councils, and it does a good job of that. In particular, we see some good savings, particularly around things like insurances and things like that. I think it's fair to say that we have wanted them to be more strategic than that, and to think about other efficiencies that can be gained across councils, whether that's shared services, better joining up, right? That's not something that they have really embraced, and that was the key reason that we wanted to and have joined CoLab. So CoLab's focus on IT systems, resources, for instance, joining up around building consents and things like that. Some of the big projects that we're working on are a lot more exciting for us. So we want to be involved in those conversations.
Councillor Daly.
Adele, I assume that an organisation such as Botlas would have a very good paper trail with regard to provincial growth funding that's assisting some of these projects.
The accounts are in the papers. Yeah. Any other questions? No? Okay, so I'll look for a mover and seconder for the recommendation to receive the statement of intent for Botlas. Councillor Mybench, Councillor Crawford. If there's no further debate, I shall put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. And before you dash away, Adele, we've got the other one, 12.6 on page 21, which is the CoLab statement of intent. Are there any further questions on that one? No. Were you indicating you wanted to move that, move councillor Henry? Seconded councillor Granger. Any further debate? No. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, Adele. So now with no further information for receipt, I shall call for a mover and seconder to exclude the public for the confidential section. Councillor Granger, Councillor Henry, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried.